Welcome to the Feria TechCast, where we bring you all things science, engineering, technology, and innovation. Today, we are joined by Dan Goodstein, known as the business therapist, a seasoned business coach and corporate sales and marketing guru with over 20 years of experience guiding companies from startups to Fortune 500 giants, leveraging insights from thousands of conversations with senior executives and his role leading major professional associations in the AI and tech space. Dan specializes in the go-to marketing strategy, sales acceleration, and cutting through the hype around trends like AI and the future of work. He's also the host of the Digital Leader Show, where he interviews top executives from Amazon, Microsoft, and beyond, distilling high-level insight and actionable strategies for growth-minded tech professionals. So, Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ezekiel. Thanks for having me.
All right, then. So let's start at the beginning. You've been called the business therapist and have worked with everyone from startups to Fortune 500 companies. Tell us, what's the common ailment you see in tech companies today?
Yeah, there's a few, but the most common one is that, tech companies are often run by or founded by very brilliant technical minds, but not necessarily, folks that have experience running and building businesses or experience in sales and marketing and those areas. So that's kind of the high level challenge, and then more specifically, as technologists, we love, because we build them, right? We love promoting features. And sometimes we forget that it's really an outcome that our customers are trying to solve, a problem that they're trying to solve. So I spend a lot of time kind of diluting down very complicated technical benefits into outcomes and a value proposition that a customer will understand to solve whatever pain point that they're trying to solve.
Great. Based on your conversations with thousands of executives, tell us what's the number one mistake tech founders make when trying to position or market their products?
Too technical, and we're all guilty of this sometimes. I had to explain, a few months ago to my then 9-year-old what I do for work. And when I realized that she had a blank face and didn't understand what I said, I realized I've got to practice what I preach and figure out a way to, simplify what I do and what my messaging is. And, I think that, obviously we're not all selling to kids, but, if your message doesn't resonate, within the first 5 seconds of a conversation or the first 5 seconds of somebody hitting your website or your collateral, you've lost them, right? It's a very, very noisy time. On one hand, there's a lot of access to technology and tools and things, but on the other hand, it's very noisy out there. And so you have less time than ever to grab someone's attention and articulate what it is that you do.
Oh, well, that's quite an interesting way to, look at things. So I'd like to ask, Dan, how is artificial intelligence actually transforming sales and marketing right now? Beyond all the hype, so what's one practical way a small tech business can actually use it today?
So there's good, like any other technology, especially AI. There's good and bad. The negative is that, as I just mentioned, right? It's creating a lot more volume of noise and confusion. It's allowing people to, automate significantly. And if you do it right, it's good. If you don't do it right, it's more junk and spam and distraction and noise. That said, we've been using some really interesting tools around scaling up sales outreach and allowing AI to do the parts of a sales cycle that either technical founders aren't good at or just don't have the time and bandwidth to do. And so there's a lot of really interesting sales AI, conversational, you to reach out to a large number of people in a very short amount of time, very cost effective way of doing it. But also, unlike traditional automation, do it in a very intelligent and personalized way. So that one of the tools that we use, actually will help you identify your target audience, find their contact information from multiple sources across the web, research them, and write emails and LinkedIn messages and even phone scripts and voicemails that put together a customized pitch and hook to get their attention. And that's something that you can't do with mass emailing and general advertising and stuff like that.
Fantastic. So, many engineers and developers build amazing products, but some often struggle to explain their value. So, I'd like to ask, what's your simplest advice for articulating what they do in a way that customers actually understand and care about it?
So I would say you have to know what the customer is buying and what their bias is, right? We have a client right now that has a very complicated value proposition, very complicated offering. And so they've tried simplifying it, which is good, but they haven't necessarily catered that messaging to their target customers. And they have two different types of customers. One is operations executives, and the other is CFOs. And so when the CFO buys the same exact product that the operations people do, they're looking for different things, right? A finance person is looking for different things often than an operations person is. And so the right messaging and the right outreach would be catered to whoever you're sending that outreach to. So even with the same product, my messaging to the finance person and the things that I think, the finance person will be interested in with that product are different and should be communicated differently than to the operations person or the IT person or whoever other stakeholders you're thinking about.
Fantastic. So, what does a simple, effective go-to-market plan look like for, let's use the example of a new tech product?
I don't know that there's a simple answer. I would say that you have to think about a couple different categories. Get the messaging right. Make sure you understand what your buyer persona is, who you're actually selling it to, and then also the other part is not just the person you're selling it to, but the channels in which you are selling or marketing it. So we always recommend a portfolio approach. You know, cold outreach, warm outreach, meaning find where your buyers are. Is it a group? Is it a community? Is it a professional association? Where are your buyers where you can have a warmer conversation? They're already predisposed to what you're selling. One of my old sales mentors used to use the analogy that you could sell a Bible to somebody who's not religious, but then you got to convince them of the value of the religion and then convince them of the value of the Bible. It's a lot easier to sell Bibles to someone who's already religious, right? So ideally, you find the places that have people that are already, religious to the things that you're selling. And then I think people vastly underestimate partnerships. Find organizations that could be a lever for you to accelerate your business based on or your product based on the reach that they have. And sometimes people overlook certain partners because they think that they're competitive, and I've found that not in all cases but in a lot of cases the potential partners that you think are your competitors are actually often the best ones because they've got similar styles, similar relationships, and maybe even a product that your product will work well with.
Interesting. So, let's talk about AI again for a bit. You talk about the future of work. So tell us, how is AI changing? What skills are most valuable for people in tech careers?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I mean, there's so many variations on an answer to that, but you first of all, from a business owner standpoint, you have, and being a bunch of technology folks, I'm sure your audience kind of gets this. I mean, there's never been a better time to run a business or have an offering because you just have access to tools and technology, AI and others that you didn't have 20 years ago, right? You can launch a social media campaign. You can record videos and podcasts. You can use AI to do what a salesperson used to do in a lot of cases. So it's changing all of that, right? You no longer have to have big company resources. In fact, in a lot of situations, startups and smaller companies are kicking the butts of the bigger companies because the bigger companies have all other hurdles like compliance and regulatory, and just move slower than a smaller business or startup can. So that's a huge advantage. And then the other is how you market yourself is very different today. I just got off another podcast where we were talking about changing your strategy from search engine optimization to what they're starting to call GEO, generative engine optimization, because in the next 5 years, people aren't going to be searching the same way that they did 5 years ago, right? They're asking AI assistants to give them recommendations. And so now you have to articulate your message not just to the end customer, but you have to communicate it to a large language model so that it recommends you when people search for the things that or ask it about the things that you want them to position you in.
Interesting. What's one outdated sales or marketing strategy that you think businesses need to actually stop using immediately, that you feel like they are too outdated, there are better options right now?
I would say I don't know if I have a single one. I would say if you're reliant on any single platform, let's say a social media platform or an advertising platform, you need to diversify. First of all, we've heard these stories about people's, YouTube accounts getting shut down or their Facebook accounts getting shut down for, arguably no reason and things. So even Amazon, so you don't necessarily want to be reliant on any single channel, but also there's an opportunity in other platforms, other social media channels that may be a better return on investment, right? You may be able to get cheaper reach in a newer platform to your audience than through a more traditional platform. So if you're relying on any single platform or you're relying on any platform that's been around for a while, you're probably overpaying and under receiving results. You want to be in a bunch of different places. The other paradigm shift that I think has happened is it used to be that a bunch of really smart marketers and creative people would decide what the messaging and what the creative looks like. I think what has to happen now is that you have to use social media uh, as a way, and the algorithms that run social media, to figure out what your customers actually want. I mean, the old school way of doing it was focus groups, right? You put six people in a room and figure out whether or not they liked your product or not. Now you have access to millions of people through social media platforms, through comments and reviews and things like that. So you can kind of test out different messaging, different value props, different products in a much more democratized way than you could 10 years ago.
So, for let's say for example, there's a tech startup with no marketing budget. So what would you advise them to go for as the most effective first step to actually start attracting customers?
I would say you should build a sales and marketing department with AI. At some point you're going to need some humans and you're going to need, people to run things and people to connect different platforms together because we're not quite at the point where there's a universal digital worker that does everything well. But you could put together, sort of a team, if you will, of AI salespeople, AI content creators, AI messaging writers, AI. We have AI website developers. There's as I'm sure you've seen AI coding tools. So you could put together sort of a team of different AI agents that run different pieces of the sales and marketing function. But what I guess what I'm trying to underscore is sales and marketing. Again, as I said at the top, technical people don't always prioritize sales and marketing, and we tend to have this, and I was guilty of this early in my career too. We tend to have this misconception that if we build the best product, people will just show up and buy it. And while there's some word of mouth in the beginning and excitement sometimes around a product, that doesn't scale. So you have to have some sales and marketing.
Great. So from your podcast interviews with leaders from platforms like Amazon, Microsoft, and others. So what's one surprising common trait among these successful tech executives that you've spoken with?
I think the biggest one is that they don't have all the answers either. We tend to think that Sam Altman at ChatGPT knows where this thing is going. And we spoke to somebody who interviewed him a couple months ago, and that person found out that he had no idea 2 years ago where this thing was going to be today. So we tend to think that these people, while they are thought leaders and they have access to information and maybe even trends that we don't, the average person doesn't have, they're not that much smarter than anybody else. And so you could be the next Sam Altman. The other example that was on our show maybe a month ago is we had the former chief digital officer from Starbucks coffee, and he told us that they didn't expect the Starbucks app, which was kind of first of its kind, at least in the U.S. They never expected that app to be what it became. They expected it to be a way of tracking orders and helping build up their loyalty program. But the success of that app was not an accident because they intended it to be valuable, but they never expected it to be what it became, which is a top of the line, cutting edge loyalty program, e-commerce player, and even banking product. Because what happened is they got people to add money to their Starbucks accounts through the app. And so all of a sudden, Starbucks is holding on to all this cash like a bank for people, in some cases for months at a time. So they didn't expect any of that. It wasn't part of the plan. And it just kind of evolved.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, I'd like to ask, Dan, what does building a better customer experience actually mean for a B2B tech company?
Yeah, I'm a big believer that as good as technology is, it's becoming more and more commoditized. Generally speaking, right? So at the end of the day, isn't always, I alluded to this before, it isn't always the best product that's going to win. I think it's the best customer experience that's going to win. So when you purchase a product, if you have a good experience using that product, becoming on board with that product, getting support from that product and the team, I think that becomes the differentiator because at the end of the day, there's going to be 47 people that do what you do. Maybe not today, but a year from now, 3 years from now, every innovation is copied. But I think what will become the differentiator is not the product features, but the overall experience.
Great. So, if you could give just one piece of advice to a technical founder who needs to start thinking like a CEO today, what would it be?
Become very familiar with your customers' pain points. Whoever it is that you want to target, or you think you want to target, your ideal customer, become intimately familiar with what their day and problems look like.
Wow, wow, wow. That's a really great piece of advice there. So, looking ahead, what's one trend in business or technology that most companies are actually completely unprepared for? I'd like to hear your thoughts on this.
I think the workforce is going to look very different in a couple of years. You have a lot of people still doing work that they don't need to be doing that technology can do. And so I think, a lot of big companies have underestimated um, how impactful some of this technology can be, AI, but also, a variety of other kind of digital transformation type of technologies. And so I don't think that you're going to need to have as big or as complicated of a workforce as you did a few years ago, as many levels of management as you did a few years ago. And so you got to start thinking about, do you want to have a smaller footprint, less people, or do you want to start educating those people? And my recommendation is the latter, right? Get your people familiar with how to leverage AI, how to build AI, how to leverage other technologies so that they can kind of help you get to the next level. And opposed to forcing the old system, the old process, the old way of doing work onto them because it's going to become obsolete and then they're going to become obsolete.
Great. So, your work is all about helping businesses to innovate in their strategies and operations. So, in this context, what does innovation truly mean to you personally, and how does it relate to your line of work?
I'm always kind of innovating, right? It used to be that even the type of work that I do, it used to be the same for at least a year, right? Now every 3 months, the technology changes, the problems change. And so I think you just got to be, you got to be nimble, you got to be flexible, you got to surround yourself by people that, are in the know, that have access to, um, information and ideas that you don't have access to, just to try to no one has all the answers, as I mentioned before, but you want to surround yourself with a cohort of people that can kind of help you stay ahead of the curve.
Amazing. So, finally, Dan, tell us for listeners who want to learn more about your work or get more insights from you. So, where's the best place for them to, find you or listen to your podcast, the Digital Leader Show, and maybe generally connect with you?
Yeah, sure. My website is businesstherapist.org. I'm on LinkedIn, Daniel Goodstein. Our podcast is called The Digital Leader Show. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts, also on LinkedIn and YouTube. And the AI sales tool that I mentioned is available at aisalsagency.com.
Wonderful, wonderful. Dan, it's been a great conversation with you, and I am excited to have you on the show today.
My pleasure, Ezekiel. Great speaking with you.